The New York Giants tweaked their 53-man roster. They add 3 waiver wire pickups. What do we know about them? We're going to find out on today's Locked On Giants podcast. Also, we're going to find out who the Giants have added to their 16-man practice squad. All that and more coming up next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina. Happy to have you with us. And today's show is brought to you in part by Run Your Pool. Check them out today and get $10 off at runyourpool.com by using our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. All right, folks, initially I was planning a Twitter Thursday today. I know a lot of you sent in questions, and I do appreciate the questions, but we have some roster moves that we need to talk about. The Giants established their part of their practice squad. They still have, I think, about 3 slots left to fill. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And the Giants also claimed 3 guys off of waivers. So a lot of you asked me as soon as these claims were made known, they're like, hey, what are you going to tell us about it? You know, are you going to have any information on these guys? Well, good news, folks. We are going to have 3 experts who cover the teams from whom the Giants' new waiver wire pickups came from. Tony Wiggins, host of LockedOn Jaguars, is going to tell us all about wide receiver Colin Johnson. And Grant Cohn, who covers the 49ers for SI Fan Nation, all 49ers. He's going to tell us a little bit about Justin Hilliard. And then we have Christopher Carter, who covers the Pittsburgh Steelers for Locked On. He is the host of the LockedOn Steelers podcast, and he is going to tell us about Quincy Roche, the linebacker awarded to the Giants off of waivers. So those interviews are coming up here on the program. But first, let's do a quick rundown as to what the Giants did on Wednesday in tweaking their roster. Now, we all knew that they were going to do it. We all knew that we were going to make tweaks. Guys were going to be added. Guys were going to be subtracted. So let's get you caught up on that. So let's start off with injured reserve. As I anticipated when I did my 53-man roster projection, Ellerson Smith and John Ross both moved to injured reserve. The thing with them, obviously, they both have hamstrings, but the thing is now they can come back after they have sat on IR for 3 weeks. So they had to be on the initial 53-man roster. Now they are eligible to be returned from the roster, returned from IR in 3 weeks' time if they are deemed healthy. All right, a weird thing happened with the Giants, what we call a procedural move. CJ Board, wide receiver, was he was cut earlier in the day, and then he was re-signed the same day. And that was basically a procedural move. And by that, I mean the Giants, in order to accommodate the guys that they were awarded off waivers, they had to create roster spots. So they cut Board, got the guys off of waivers, the 3 guys off of waivers, and then they re-signed Board after they made the moves to put Ellerson Smith and John Ross on injured reserve. So that's kind of what they had to do. It's the same contract for Board. There's no dead money or anything like that. So it's just what they call a procedural move. The Giants also re-signed long snapper Casey Kreider. We knew that was going to happen. The Giants, no way they were going to go into this season without a long snapper. So that happened. The Giants cut a couple of guys. They cut receiver Dante Pettis, who made the initial 53-man roster. That was a guy who, when he initially made it, I was kind of surprised he made it, but kind of, I guess they're swapping out Colin Johnson for Dante Pettis. And the reason there, as you'll probably hear later on when we talk to Anthony Wiggins, is Colin Johnson, much taller receiver, has a bigger catch radius, can probably help there on offense and special teams. I think he's something like 6'6", whereas Dante Pettis was 6'1". So we'll find out a little bit more about him coming up from Anthony Wiggins of LockedOn Jaguars. The Giants also cut. Now, this move was kind of a surprise for me, but, I guess linebacker for linebacker. So they cut outside linebacker Trent Harris, who had a pretty good summer. So I was kind of surprised that he was moved off the roster. I thought, once Ellerson Smith went to IR, the Giants might, bring in another outside linebacker, which they did. They brought in Quincy Roche who was with the Steelers, but they decided to go in a different direction with Trent, as far as Trent Harris goes, and he is no longer on the roster. So that is your list of cuts. Now let's go through the practice squad signings. Now the Giants only announced 13 guys, but there were some other guys who were reported. And I'm going to put a link in the show description if you want to read about the guys that were added, because I'm not going to have time, unfortunately, to go through every single one, but I will mention them. And a lot of them were with the Giants in the summer. So they signed receiver Damian Willis, outside linebacker Nico Lalos. They added a guy by the name of Ryan Izzo. He's a tight end. He was originally with the New England Patriots. The Patriots traded him, I believe, to the Texans. And that move was not announced by the Giants, but Izzo's agent announced that move as being forthcoming. So it might just be a matter of, him coming in and taking care of the administrative work before he's officially signed to the practice squad. Brett Heggie was signed to the practice squad. David Sills, two guys, of course, that were with the Giants over the summer. Matt Cole, wide receiver. Tight end Nakia Griffin-Stewart. Tight end Jake Hausman. Offensive lineman Kenny Wiggins. Defensive lineman David Moa. Another new tight end Chris Myrick, who was with the Dolphins most recently. So again, that's another case of the guys signing with the Giants or about to sign with the Giants, as reported by his agency before the team made the announcement official. Jackson Barton was signed to the practice squad. Jake Burton, both offensive linemen. Defensive lineman Willie Henry, and defensive back Jordan Peters. Okay, so a couple of quick notes and observations about this list. So far, the Giants don't have a quarterback on the list, but my understanding is Brian Lewerke will probably be added to the practice squad. Certainly, they're going to add a third quarterback, whether it's Lewerke or somebody else, but I believe it's going to be him. The Giants seem to like to bring back guys that they had in the summer training camp to their roster. So that move still needs to be made. Now, here's what I found interesting about this list is the Giants have 4 tight ends by my count. Again, 2 of the moves are not official. They were not announced by the team, but they have 4 tight ends. Now, read into that what you want, and maybe it's nothing with nothing, but Evan Ingram did not practice on Wednesday. The Giants held kind of like a light padded practice. Actually, it wasn't even full pads. It was more of a shells type of deal. Evan Ingram didn't even dress for the practice. He was in street clothes. He's dealing with that calf injury. And head coach Joe Judge was not able to give reporters any kind of update regarding whether Ingram is going to be able to play in week 1. They're kind of taking it on a day-by-day basis with him. With Kyle Rudolph also having recently come off of PUP, it was a week ago Wednesday that he came off a PUP. There's some question as to how ready he's going to be for a full workload. So I just found it interesting that the Giants have 4 tight ends on their practice squad, or projected to have 4 tight ends on their practice squad, and very telling at that, because that tells me that there's some concern by the Giants about whether or not they're going to have a full range of tight ends available for that week 1 game. So that's something we will certainly keep our eye on as we go through the next several days. All right, folks, coming up, we are going to hear from our guests. First up is going to be Grant Cohn. He is the publisher of All 49ers over at FanNationSI.com. And he's going to tell us a little bit about linebacker Justin Hilliard. Hey, Giant fans, we have plenty more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, football season is back, so let's make the most of it with a better way to create your custom pool at runyourpool.com, the premier sports pool hosting service. Run Your Pool makes it ridiculously easy to run a football pool with friends, family, or office mates. They offer dozens of formats, including Survivor, Pick'em, Squares, Margin, Confidence Pools, 33, and many more. Run Your Pool hosts formats for NFL and college football with 1-week games, full season, playoffs, or the Super Bowl. Unlike other fantasy sports platform, Run Your Pool has options and settings to make it your own. You can even brand your pool for your local business, bar, or restaurant. Reconnect with friends and join nearly 2 million football fans to make every game action-packed this season. Check them out today and get $10 off at runyourpool.com/lockedon or use our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. The NFL season starts September 9th, so start today at runyourpool.com/lockedon and have your pool up and running in minutes. That's runyourpool.com/lockedon. Game on. All right, welcome back, Giant fans, to the Locked On Giants podcast. And as promised, I am joined by Grant Cohn. He is the publisher over at All 49er, and that is a SI/Fan Nation sports channel. Does a really good job over there. Is the gold standard for some of us who run our own publications over there, Giants country. Grant, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on with me to talk about Justin Hilliard. And I got to start off by asking you, tell me about this guy. What does he bring to the table?
He's interesting. I think the legend was that Nick Bosa recommended that the 49ers sign him. He was an undrafted free agent this year. He's a rookie. He went to Ohio State. He was a 5-star recruit, so he's a big deal. But his college career didn't work out. He got hurt a lot of times. He went to Ohio State for 6 years. He was like the Van Wilder of that football team. So he was there for a long time and didn't play that well, but got a shot as an undrafted free agent, and he was great. I mean, he was good in camp. And then in preseason, for what it's worth, he led the team in tackles by far. He had 18. No one else had more than 11. So I think it was pretty easy for teams around the league to kind of look at the box scores and go, oh, this guy, he looks, he's young. He's promising. He was a big deal coming out of high school. Maybe he's finally healthy. And I think that's what's going on. So good for the Giants.
Yeah. Were you surprised that they cut him?
I was surprised that they cut him. I mean, he seemed like a hidden gem that they found and developed. Undrafted free agent, led the whole team in tackles in preseason. You figured there'd be a spot on the roster for him, but they kept a couple other guys that they've been developing for a few years. And maybe they kept their fingers crossed that he would make it through waivers, and maybe they got burned. I can't imagine that they were okay losing him, but they had about 3 or 4 of their players claimed off a waiver. So I guess they feel like this is a good problem to have when you're a good team.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if you have players that are claimed off waivers, that means you've done your job right.
Right.
But tell me what you think happened there. Was he caught up with the numbers, and what were the expectations of him? And did he maybe not live up to those expectations?
The funny thing is he blew away expectations. I don't think there were any expectations for him. I think when they signed him, they were thinking it's a guy we can develop for a few years on the practice squad. But he did so well in preseason and put himself on the radar of other teams who may have been interested in him a few months ago, that he kind of ruined the 49ers timetable and schedule and plan for him. The 49ers are really good at developing undrafted free agent line. Almost too good. They've been kind of committed to other guys that have been in their team for a few years. They had another guy this year named Jonas Griffith, who was the second year on the team, played so well they traded him because they knew they didn't have a spot for him and they knew he wasn't going to make it through waiver. So maybe the Niners, in retrospect, could have traded Justin Hilliard too. I don't know. Maybe they tried. I'm sure they tried.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when the team knows you're going to cut a guy, it's like, why even bother? Definitely.
Right.
Where's Justin Hilliard's best fit on a defense?
I would think his best fit is, well, let me ask you. I'm not that familiar with the Giants' defensive scheme. Is it 3-4 or 4-3?
It's a 3-4 base.
Man, he's a perfect fitted inside linebacker. Either one, he's a great fitted inside linebacker, and he should be able to be a contributor on special teams as well. I think that would be the first expectation. Let him do something on special teams. I think he's a perfect athlete for that. But I think he certainly has potential as an inside linebacker in the 3-4 defense for sure.
What about specials? Does he bring anything there?
Yeah, I mean, he'd be terrific on kick coverage, punt coverage. He runs and hits very hard. He's a big man. He's a big man. Is he not 6'4"? I could be wrong.
I think
here.
That sounds about right.
He's about 6'4", 250. He's almost built like an edge rusher, but he is a true inside linebacker who can run. And he has special athleticism, which was why he went to Ohio State and was a 5-star recruit. He's just been hurt for like 6 years. And from the looks of what he did in preseason, he's healthy now. So good for him.
What does he do well? Is he good in coverage? Is he better as a downhill backer? And what doesn't he do well just yet?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that as an undrafted free agent who's 250 pounds and been through a lot of injuries, probably man-to-man coverage isn't his strength. I mean, if he was good in man-to-man coverage, he'd be a high draft pick. But what I think he showed in preseason is he can run and hit. If you kind of keep it simple for him and maybe ask other linebackers to be in man coverage or safeties, and you just kind of let him run around and hit people, he's really good at it. And I think there's always a role for a runner and a hitter on your defense. The Niners have a lot of them. I'm still surprised they didn't keep this guy. It just seems like he's exactly the kind of linebacker that you want to have on your team. I mean, he's young and he's cheap and he's improving. I think he's someone that it can stand out, just flashing across the screen, streaking, sprinting, and hitting people. Very simple, like the water boy.
Sounds like it makes you scratch your head then why the 49ers got rid of him. I guess maybe it was a numbers thing.
I think it was a numbers thing, and they were hoping they could get him on the practice squad. But when he is one of the leading tacklers in the NFL in the preseason, I think the secret's out, the word's out.
And the Giants got him. So
the Giants got him.
And I'll tell you what, for the Giants, it's been a long time since their linebacker core has been this good, this deep. So it sounds like they got themselves a winner.
The Giants seem to be poaching the Niners players often. There was Caden Smith a couple of years ago, seems to have worked out. And then there was Dante Pettis, who didn't work out. Did he? Did he? Oh,
no, they actually ended up cutting him Wednesday. So he was injured, I think, for most of training camp. So yeah.
So sorry to hear that.
You're right. The Giants have gone, Levine Toilolo, don't forget about him.
So a good call. That's 4.
Yes. I mean, unfortunately, he suffered the Achilles injury, but you're right. The Giants have been looking over at the 49ers quite often, it seems.
I'm sure the Niners are flattered.
Well, I wish the Giants, they do an okay job. They could probably do a little bit better in some areas, but, offensive linemen, if you got any offensive linemen, maybe the Giants can poach. That would be kind of nice.
It's definitely the Niners' worst position too. It seems like it's every team's worst position. I don't know what's going on with colleges developing those players. It seems like every team has 11 defensive linemen who are just amazing athletes, and then like 7 offensive linemen, and they're like, I don't know. Maybe some of those defensive linemen should switch to offense.
And by the way, you poached from us a few years ago. You poached Weston Richburg, who has retired.
That is right.
So
I think he had his best years with the Giants, though. But he got paid here. He's going to have a nice retirement because of the 49ers. So he's got that.
Good guy.
Absolutely.
Had some injury issues here, and that was the end of him, unfortunately. But a good dude and not a bad center at all.
He was quite good. He was quite good, actually.
Yes, he was.
The Niners are still trying to replace him. They brought in Alex Mack, who's older than Weston Richburg, and they need Alex Mack to be good. We'll see. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. Going to be interesting. Yeah. So anyway, Grant, thank you as always for jumping in, helping me out. I appreciate you. And folks, you can find him at all49ers.com, which is the Sports Illustrated /Fan Nation website. They do a fantastic job covering the 49ers if you're looking for 49ers coverage. And again, his name is Grant Cohn. He does a lot of cool things that I might just steal for Giants country.
Please do.
All right. Giant fans, thank you so much. We're going to be back after this with more on the Giants waiver wire pickup. So stay with us. Hey, Giant fans, we have much more coming up here on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, get all the latest news, odds, info, and sign-up bonuses for all your sporting needs by heading over to BetOnline on your laptop or mobile device. When you open an account and use our special promo code LOCKEDON, you will receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Again, that's code LOCKEDON for your 50% welcome bonus. Terms and conditions apply. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, joining me now is Christopher Carter. He is the host of the LockedOn Steelers podcast, and he is here to tell us a little bit about Quincy Roche, one of the 3 players the Giants were awarded off waivers. Christopher, thank you so much for taking the time to come on with me today. Hope you're well.
I am well. Glad to always chat with you, Patricia. It feels like we just did this last year with Tuzar Skipper, and that didn't exactly last too long with you guys.
Well, the Giants are taking another chance on another linebacker, edge rusher, Quincy Roche, 1 year with Miami. He was the Temple transfer. Mm-hmm. So let's jump right into it. Let's get the lowdown on this young man. What does he bring to the table?
One thing that always stood out to me about Quincy Roche, and even like I cover the University of Pittsburgh's football team, and when they took on Miami, he was a problem because his hands are so active. One thing that stands out, and he has a lot of other fundamentals to work on. I think he has to work on his footwork a little bit more. He has to get his burst up. But one thing is that you can always count on Quincy Roche. He's always working some type of hand technique to win inside or outside. It's why he excelled so much at Temple and why he kind of jumped up at Miami. But he was less polished than the Gregor Rousseaus and the other guys that went ahead of him at edge rusher at Miami. So that's why he fell all the way to the 6th round. But I mean, I know, Patricia, I don't know if you were scouring the draft blogs and all the experts, before the draft, but a lot of people pegged this guy as a 3rd or 4th round pick. So when the Steelers saw him in the 6th, they were like, why not? And they brought him in. But the issue was they signed Melvin Ingram, and it's at the start of training camp. So now that was one more edge spot. And TJ Watt, they're expecting him to sign his contract soon, and he's been at practice every day. They don't want him being hit yet until the season's about to start. Alex Highsmith has really come on strong as a 2nd-year player. They're expecting him to be a really good starter. So that's 3 guys at the top of the edge rusher list. And now it comes down to really just a 4th because they wanted to keep an extra off-ball linebacker. And it really came down to Quincy Roche, Jameer Jones, and Cassius Marsh. Jameer Jones, an undrafted guy who kind of fit in from Notre Dame and really made a name for himself. He was more explosive than Roche. And I think that was the biggest thing is Roche wasn't putting it all together. Plus, Roche wasn't as good of a special teams guy. And anyone knows when you're one of those bottom of the 53 roster guys, if you're fighting for one of those last spots on the depth chart, you better be good on special teams. And Roche was decent, but not as good as Jameer Jones. And so that's why they went with him. And Cassius Marsh as a veteran just didn't show enough to say, hey, you're that much better than these guys. The Steelers were, the sense that I got was they were reluctant to let go of Quincy Roche, but it was just one of the many tough cuts that teams had to make when they were trimming down to the final 53.
Initially, what was the role expected of him? Was he going to be a situational pass rusher? Was he going to be an edge guy, a 3-point stance type of guy? I mean, what was the initial role for him?
The plan was to make him the backup edge guy, to be one of the guys. If he could fight through camp, he would have been one of the guys that would have been giving TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith a breather so that they could come off, take a few snaps of rest, and then come back fresh in a couple plays. But to be honest, when they signed Melvin Ingram, I mean, I was like, well, he's not just going to do that. He's going to be rotated in just like one of those guys. So they're going to have 3 guys. So really now the 4th option is just, okay, who's going to line up next to Melvin Ingram? And they wanted him to be able to do that, but Jameer Jones he popped off so much more in training camp, in preseason tape, and on special teams. So that's where I felt like he kind of fell short there. But the plan was to make him a pure edge rusher. That's who Quincy Roche is. I think he can grow to get even better at that job. That's the other thing. There was definitely a sense of like, man, like a lot of Steelers fans like, man, we really liked that guy. Like there's a lot of people out there that wanted to see him stick around. But again, it's just, the Steelers, they kept 5 running backs because they were, they know it's a long season and they want to make sure that Najee Harris has enough protection behind him in case, he needs to go out for a week. They kept 4 cornerbacks. So they're like, oh, that's in there, but they kept 6 off-ball linebackers. Last year, they were down to their 5th and 6th off-ball linebackers after several injuries and a couple COVID incidents, really made it tough on them. So, that this was just one of the positions that they had to pinch. And that's what I feel like happened to Quincy Roche. But there's definitely a lot of upside to this guy the Giants are getting.
Okay. So final question then, what kind of upside does he bring? And where do you think his best fit would be in the Giants defense based on what you know of it, of course?
What I would say is if you want an edge guy to come off the bench and give you some solid work on some passing downs, I think he still needs to work on his run defense a little bit more and to maintain the edge and to do that better. But when it's like, say it's 2nd and long and the other team does drop back to pass, and you've had your star edge rusher out there for a little bit, or your starters out there, you need to give them a break. That's the ideal time you want him in. He'll get after the quarterback. He'll take it to an offensive tackle. And I mean, I've seen him have some really good reps where it's like, man, he's putting things together there. He has technique. He just needs to put it all together. And that's the real upside, is that once he gets a little bit more experience and he gets his feet under him, he has that potential to be a guy that you could say, hey, you're the rotational edge guy that we're throwing in there. And then if he does well enough at that for a year or two, eventually someday become a starter. But, first, one step at a time, Patricia. I think the biggest thing is you're getting a guy that knows his way around pass rush techniques. And I think he really took a lot also from working alongside Melvin Ingram and Alex Highsmith in camp. TJ Watt wasn't practicing in physical drills and 11-on-11s, but he was always there talking with the guys, working with the guys, because the Steelers are just saving him until the start of the season. But Roche, as an upside for the Giants, you guys got a guy who has good hands, is working on his footwork, and in my eyes has a shot to be a good rotational pass rusher for the next year or two, and maybe become a starter very soon.
All right. Well, the Giants always like to say you can never have too many pass rushers, and it's certainly true. The Giants pass rush looking to improve. Not bad last year. They were 14th, I think, overall with sacks, looking to get in the top 10, trying to get pressure on that quarterback. So, hey, you can never have too many. And of course, they still have some injuries there with Ellerson Smith. And, we need to see how healthy Lorenzo Carter is. So sounds like an interesting pickup. And I am very much looking forward to seeing how much Quincy Roche can bring to the Giants defense. He is Christopher Carter. He is the host of the LockedOn Steelers podcast. Check him out. He can be found on Twitter at Carter Critiques. Christopher, thank you so much for the information.
Thank you, Patricia.
Hey, Giant fans, more coming up here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, no matter what you need for your car or truck, rockauto.com is sure to have it in its extensive online catalog. Rockauto.com offers brand name parts for every make, every model, and every manufacturer at highly competitive prices, and they ship right to your door. Visit rockauto.com and be sure to write down Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know we sent you. That's rockauto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car or truck will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, Giant fans, now we are in for a treat. I'm pleased to welcome this very handsome gentleman that you see on the screen. He is one Anthony Wiggins. He is the host of the LockedOn Jaguars podcast. Yes. I wish he was with LockedOn Giants. That's how much I love this guy.
Oh yeah, you're my girl, man. You always got good things to say about me, and
I love you, man. You know it.
I love it. Ain't nothing wrong with it. I appreciate someone who appreciates me self-deprecating myself while I'm about to drown in the Caribbean. You know what I mean? Oh, definitely. The picture.
And for those of you who don't know what Anthony's talking about, he's talking about a picture he posted on his Twitter account. The things he does for love, I'm telling you.
That's right. You told me never change.
My own heart.
You said never change, and I love it to death, man.
Yeah. Hey, listen, that's what makes you so special. I mean, so this is an absolute treat. Anthony is going to give us a little lowdown on Colin Johnson, the receiver that the Giants picked up off of waivers from the Jaguars. So, Anthony, my man, I'm going to turn this over to you. Let's start off with what Colin Johnson brings to the table.
Catch radius, size. He's 6'6", and he's every bit of 6'6", and really, really good player. Probably would have been drafted higher than he was. He got injured at Texas his last year there, but he was their number one receiver. And when he came in last year, everybody thought, okay, big and slow. Not the case. He's not necessarily a burner, but I tell people this all the time. When you look at some of the top receivers in the league, take Tyreek Hill out of it. You look at guys like Keenan Allen and D-Hop over the years, and Larry Fitzgerald, and even now Devontae Adams, guys that are right at the very, very top of the NFL tree in terms of wide receivers. They're not burners. So I'm not saying that Collin Johnson is Mike Evans, but there is a fear here in Jacksonville that what he is he's Lazard 2.0. And what I mean by that is Alan Lazard was in camp with the Jaguars, and he was a fan favorite. They let him go, and now he's the number 2 receiver for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. A lot of people around here believe that that's the same thing that's going to happen with Colin Johnson because of the need for speed here and the need for the jitterbugs and people that could really, really stretch the field made that a priority. And unfortunately for him, that left him as the odd man out.
So, with a new quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, you would think you'd want to have all these guys, these offensive weapons. So what happened? Why do you think Johnson was the odd man out?
Well, when Urban took the team over, he made an observation that was correct, and that is the overall team speed was lacking. And they went out and signed Marvin Jones Jr. because all the other receivers that they had on the team were the oldest one, and the guy with the most experience was DJ Chark. He had 3 years experience. So they went and got a guy like Marvin Jones Jr., who's a professional pass catcher. And it's very, very important to have those guys, Patricia, and you've been around a long time. You need someone who makes that room have integrity. So Marvin Jones has come in, and he's been a godsend for Trevor. It seems like when Trevor gets in trouble, that's where he turns and looks. So he did exactly what he wanted, what he needed to do. And he also showed those guys how to translate from the training room to the practice field, and now hopefully from the practice field to the games. And then they went out and they got Agnew, this kid Agnew, who's the punt returner, kick returner. But what that does is that eats a slot up. So they think he's the best punt kick returner in the league from Detroit, and special teams is a priority here. But what happens is at some point you don't look at the 53 and it goes kick returner, punt returner. He has to be in a position. So that's another wide receiver. Add in the fact that they had Laviska Shenault and DJ Chark as the number 1 and number 2 guys, right? So now, where do you get speed from if Colin Johnson is now your 5th guy? They drafted Travis Etienne to sort of be a slash player, wide receiver / running back. He's out for the season with a Liz Frank injury. That may have had as much to do with this as anything, because what they did was to try to make up for the loss of Etienne. You can't do it with one guy. He was a special player. They're doing it with like 3 different people. They picked the kid up today, Tyron Johnson, who's from the Chargers. He's a really, really good player, but he's a fast guy. Tavon Austin came into camp like a jitterbug. He's a fast guy. They're trying to, in my opinion, make up for the loss of Travis Etienne. And the danger in doing that is he's one guy who's special, but in order to make up for it, you got to get 2. And I think that cost Colin Johnson his spot here in Jacksonville.
All right. So now let me ask you this. The Giants have Kenny Golladay, who's a big receiver. They have Darius Slayton, who's pretty tall. They have Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney, who are 2 slot type of guys. Where do you think Johnson would fit in the Giants receiver rotation?
I think he fits in well, because when you get in the red zone, sometimes when you get in the red zone, they have that back line, and that back line is like a 12th person. And a fast guy wants to run by you. Well, when you have the back line, there's nowhere else to go. So the real estate, and you guys know this by being in New York, if you don't have a lot of real estate, you just keep building upward and you build skyscrapers. So I think the room for him is in the red zone. You can throw it higher if you can't throw it further. And I think that's what really helps him make an impact with the New York Giants is his red zone targets.
And of course, that would fit in really nicely, because even though the Giants added Kyle Rudolph as a red zone target, he's coming off the foot surgery, just came off a PUP a week ago, actually today. And who knows how much he's going to be able to do, at least in the very beginning. So it sounds like they've got themselves another skyscraper in this kid. I think he's 6'5", if I'm not mistaken.
He's at the very least 6'5". I think he might be 6'6". Okay. And the thing is he plays that way. I will give you one bonus. Ever since Odell left, you guys have probably missed the one-handed catches. He was known to do that in practice. Here. Yeah, he's a one-handed. He'll snag it. He'll go up and get it. So, poor man's Mike Evans. And I hate to really do that to guys, but I think you're getting a fantastic player. You're also getting a classy player. When he left here, he thanked Jacksonville on Twitter. So you're getting a guy that's going to come in. He's going to work extremely hard, and he's just going to be an addition to that football team. And if I'm right about this, at some point he's going to make plays, and Giant fans are going to love him.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, and nobody knows the Jaguars better than my man, Anthony. Great catching up with you. This was absolutely a treat. Like I said, I was so happy to have this opportunity. Check him out, folks. He is the host of the LockedOn Jaguars podcast. You can find him on Twitter at ShopTalkingWig. You'll see that on the bottom of the screen there. And Anthony, my friend, thank you so much for the insight.
Thank you. And can I mention this? Locked on NFL on Wednesdays with James.
Yes. Don't forget. Locked on NFL. Yes. Right. My bad. Catch
No,
Anthony
I
on Locked
no, I know you ain't forget. I had you on there, so and you were the star of the show. I thought they were gonna fire me and hire you that day, man.
That chance of that happening. They
All
can never
right,
get rid of you. They can never replace you. Come
all right,
on,
I
you're okay.
appreciate it. I
All right,
appreciate it,
folks.
Patricia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. All right, folks, stay tuned. More coming up here on the Locked On Giants podcast as we go over the Giants roster tweaks made on Wednesday. All right, Giant fans, that'll do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. And I know I certainly did, talking with Tony and Grant and Christopher, three very knowledgeable guys who know their teams inside and out. So very happy to have them with us and very happy to have you with us as well. If you aren't already subscribing on YouTube, please do so and click that little bell and like our channel would be appreciated. Getting closer and closer to getting that lollipop. And the plan for Friday's show, as of right now, we're going to try and get to your Twitter questions. I know a lot of you send questions in. So again, I apologize that I had to bump the show from today's slot, but I felt it was important to get to the roster guys. So we'll aim for Twitter Friday, I guess fan mailbag Friday, I guess we'll call it. We will aim for that on Friday's show. So until then, everybody, thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you again soon.